Hey everyone, welcome back to Saucy Fix's channel. This channel is designed for the modern family repairing things around the house in a throwaway society. Today we have a repair on the Proform Carbon TL treadmill. So follow along for the history on this guy, the disassembly, the diagnostics, and the repair. Okay, so a bit of history on this treadmill. And my kind of experience in working on treadmills. About 3 months ago, I decided that I wanted to get back into running, and my first choice was to look for a free treadmill on Marketplace. I found one that was non-functional, ended up repairing it and selling it. The reason why I didn't keep it was because my weight was just kind of at the upper end of the weight limit for that treadmill, and I decided I wanted to get something a little more robust. So I started the search again on Marketplace, and I came across this treadmill. This one was listed for 300 Canadian dollars, and the seller said that it was basically new. So I decided, yep, I'm gonna go take a look at it, and upon initial inspection, I thought, yes, this does look like a very good condition treadmill. My only experience in looking at treadmills was the free one that I had, and I thought, this one looks good. So I took it home, and first thing I did was I checked the odometer on this treadmill, which showed 0 hours and 2 miles on it. And I thought, okay, that lines up with it being relatively new. The other thing that I noticed is that the date of manufacture was in 2023. So if it only had 2 miles on it and the date of manufacture was 3 years ago, it sat for a while. That brought me to the owner's manual, because I know that treadmills need to be lubricated. And in this specific model, the product manual says to not lubricate it. It says that the belt and the deck come pre-lubricated from the factory for life, and they don't need to be lubricated. And if it does need to be lubricated, to contact a technician to help out with that. That obviously went against what I knew about treadmills, that they needed to be lubricated. So I went online, and sure enough, almost everyone says that yes, that's just a marketing thing, a legal thing for them to say. All treadmills do need to be lubricated at one point or another. But against my better judgment, I decided, well, the manual said that this does not need to be lubricated, so we will not lubricate it. I ran on it for about a half an hour, and near the end of my workout, the treadmill, the breaker in my house popped. Now that's on me, because the circuit that I had the treadmill plugged into had been running multiple different things, and I didn't really realize how much energy this one pulled. And further to that, I didn't realize that there was something wrong with it and that it was pulling more than it should have been anyways. So I reset the breaker, and unbeknownst to me, I started it back up and started walking on it again. And about a minute or two after walking on it, the belt stopped turning. As soon as I stepped off the treadmill, the belt would continue turning. So I knew that there was something going on with the control module inside the control circuit board. So I took the front panel off, the motor panel here, which is just held in by 5 Phillips screws, or star head screws, and I started walking on the treadmill, and noticed that whenever it stopped, whenever it's working properly, there's a red blinking on the control board that blinks very steadily while you're walking on it, and when it stops, the red blink will blink and then kind of pause for a second, then blink and pause for a second, which is a trouble code for this treadmill. Looking it up online, I found out that that meant there was a current overload on the treadmill, which makes sense because the belt's stopping because there's a current overload. My next step of diagnostics was to see how much current this motor was pulling. And to do that, I used my Klein clamp multimeter that can measure amps being pulled in DC and in AC current. So I put it in DC current, hooked it up to the motor, and sure enough, this treadmill was pulling 15 to 17 amps, which is way too high for any treadmill. to be pulling and actually just maxing out the amp draw on the breaker for this circuit of my house. So I was left a bit dumbfounded because, you know, on the surface of things, this looks like a brand new treadmill. It shouldn't be pulling that much amperage. And the odometer said that it had 2 miles on it, but sure enough, the motor was pulling, you know, 17 amps. So that led me to my next diagnostics of looking at the belt and the deck. I knew it wasn't the motor or the rollers because I would have heard something going wrong with them. Like if a bearing is seized, you'll hear, you know, high-pitched noise or something else, and it will be very difficult to actually rotate the belt. It wasn't difficult to rotate the belt. And I should note that at no load on this treadmill, it was only pulling about 2 to 3 amps. So I knew that there was an issue between the belt and the deck. How these things work is the belt and the deck both have low friction surfaces, and to increase that glideability and to reduce the heat, you put silicone in between the belt and the deck to help the motor push it along. The motor needs to move your body weight, which in my case is 200 pounds, along the belt deck, and the more friction there is, the friction coefficient goes up, the more the motor has to work, more current and more voltage going into the motor to push you along. So ideally you want that surface as slippery as possible, so the motor has to work the least amount, as well as the control board. You know, the control board will send the power to the motor in the form of DC power, and there's MOSFETs on the control board that will handle that, and you don't want to be overloading those MOSFETs with, you know, 15 to 20 amps because it'll burn them out in short order. So I knew there was a problem between the friction of the belt and the deck, but again, I didn't really understand why because this was supposed to be new. So it led me to two conclusions. One, or two possibilities. One is that this treadmill actually had a lot more mileage on it than the owner led me to believe. Or two, the belt and deck were completely dry of any kind of lubrication because if it sat for 3 years, there would be, you know, the lubrication will dry up. And then when I ran on it dry and basically just overheated the belt and the deck, which kind of ruined it. So I'm not too sure which one. Looking at the belt and the deck, I don't think that they were used very much. Now the deck did have some scratches on it. You'll see that later in the video. The deck, you know, looked like it was worn, but to the point where it had, you know, 5,000 miles on it, I don't think so. So I'm leaning towards that maybe it just wasn't lubricated, or the belt and the deck sat for so long that they're just no longer any good without being used. So it led me to my next decision of, do I keep it? I'm already $300 in the hole on this guy. They retail brand new for $6.99, and you know, I don't want to dump a bunch of money. So I went to Reddit, and you know, everyone was saying, well, it needs a new belt, it needs a new deck. And I thought, okay, well, how much is a new belt and a new deck? A new belt and a new deck for this specific treadmill likely would have came in around $500 to $600. That would have put me at $900, which is way more than even a brand new treadmill would cost. So I started looking at other options. One of the options was to flip the deck, and sure enough, I just completely disassembled the treadmill, which you'll be able to see later on in the video, and I flipped the deck to see if it was flippable. Some treadmills do have flippable decks, so that when one side's worn out, you can use the other side. And sure enough, all of the holes matched up on the other side of the deck, as well as the phenolic coating seemed to be on the other side of the deck. So, okay, so that brings my price down to just a belt. Now, I found this belt from a Canadian retailer, which I'll put in the description, and the belt is supposed to be better than the one that comes from the factory. It's a 2-ply belt, and it was only about 200 Canadian. So at that point, I thought, okay, $300, flip the deck, and another $200 for the treadmill belt. Now I'm $500 in on this thing. It's still cheaper than a brand new one at $6.99 plus tax. So I thought, what the heck, I will give it a go. So I ordered the belt. It was pretty much at my house within a couple of days, and I put it on the treadmill. Sure, I should say that I actually did try and flip the deck with the old belt, and I was still getting the same reading, so I knew that the belt was definitely part of the issue. So putting this new belt on, immediately I noticed that the amps had gone back down to 5 to 7 amps, so I knew that that fixed the issue, and I was quite relieved that it wasn't going to cost me any more money. And now at this point I'm probably about 20 miles on this thing and it's still holding strong. One more thing that I did do to this that's not mentioned in the video later on is that there's belt guides down here, and there's 2 of them, one on each side of the belt, and they kind of keep the belt centered in the middle of the deck, and this helps prevent the belt from moving off to the side too far and damaging the belt against the side rails. And that can happen based off of your gait. If you're running and you're putting too much weight on one side, the belt will shift. Ideally, the belt should stay centered, and those guides just kind of help. My guides were set at 65 degrees from the factory, which is a lot closer to 90 degrees than I would like. So I actually put them to 45 degrees, which bowed them out a little bit, and it decreased the amount of friction from the belt on the guides. The reason why I did that is because I noticed that the belt was actually rubbing on them quite significantly, causing a chirping noise, as well as I saw some of the bottom material of the belt kind of fraying off or linting off onto the guides. And I thought that if I could reduce the angle and have the belt contact, but not too much, it would be better for the treadmill. And it has been a lot better. The belt and the treadmill are quiet now, and it's basically running like new, I think, or maybe better than new. So yeah, follow along for this, the disassembly, the diagnostics, and the repair for this. Okay, everyone, I have the amp meter set up on the treadmill here. It's connected to the black wire of the motor. It's an amp clamp meter just connected around the black wire to show the amps drawn by the motor once it's in use. I'm going to start up the treadmill here without any load, and you'll see how much the amperage goes up with a load. Now, this deck has been flipped to the unused side, but I'm still using the old belt here, so we'll see exactly what's going on. Right now we're at 1 mile per hour, getting about a 2.5 amp draw. It says negative there because it's hooked up on the other side. If I were to reverse the clamp, it would be positive. So yeah, about 2.5 amps, which is pretty normal for a treadmill. You'll be getting roughly around that kind of amp draw without a load. Now with a load, you should be going up to about 6 to 10 amps, preferably on the lower end of that. 6 amps would be ideal for the longevity of the motor, the controller, the belt, and the deck. Now I'm going to stand on the belt, and we're going to see just exactly how many amps we're drawing here. Right away, we shoot up to 15, 14, 13. So you can see there's considerable amp draw. I'm not going to stand on here for very long because I don't want it to overload the controller and the MOSFETs. But yeah, that kind of amp draw is not good for anything on the treadmill. All right, now we'll move to the disassembly portion of this video. We're going to disassemble this treadmill. First things first is we're going to take off these back covers for the legs. Just 2 star heads on each left and right leg. Okay, now after those are off, these should just pop off. There's 1, there's 2. Put those off to the side. And for the top part, which is going to be your foot rail, the guardrail on the left and the right, those are going to be removed from each and every one of these screws. The screws are just screwed into the deck. So let's take those out. And once all 7 are off, the left and the right foot rail should come out. Just move this down a quick second. There we go, that one pops out. And then same thing for this side. All right, second one comes off. Now the shock absorption of this, or the ProShock material of this deck, just comes out with 4 screws, 2 on each side. They are different than the other foot rails, so put those off to the side. Okay, so now the foot rails and the back leg covers are off, and the shocks are disconnected from the deck. There's only 4 remaining bolts that are going to hold this deck to the frame, and there's 2 up here and 2 at the front near the motor. Okay, to remove the 4 screws that are holding the deck to the frame, there's 2 in the back here, 2 in the front. You're going to need a 14mm wrench to go underneath the bolt here to lock onto the nut, and you're going to need a 5.5 hex for the nuts, the same hex as your adjustment screws for your rear and front roller. It's a bit easier to get to these nuts if the platform is raised, so that's what I did. I put it into the folding position. I'm just going to throw that on there. The 2 back ones are out. Now we got to do the front. While you're at it with this one up, you can undo the rear roller nuts. We'll hand up here. Just screw them all the way out, that same 5.5 hex. This will give you a ton of slack for the belt to move. Once those 2 are released, the rear roller should come out. With the rear roller out, you should be able to spin it pretty freely without any issue. If you're hearing grinding or anything like that, it means the bearings are probably worn out or needing lubrication. Now with the rear roller out, you can undo the belt guide rails right here. I'm not going to take mine off because I already know that these are in there properly. But if you're flipping your deck, you're going to want to take them out and put them on the other side. Okay, now we're going to attack the front roller as well as the 2 remaining bolts holding the deck to the frame. Again, we're going to use the same 5.5 hex with a 14mm wrench. I am going to remove the front roller first. The nut right here on the right side of the roller that holds the bolt in the adjustment bolt is going to be a 10mm. And this screw is just to adjust the front roller. Under optimal circumstances, you want the roller to be completely parallel to the deck, and you can adjust the rear rollers for your left and right drift of the belt. And the left side of the front roller just sits into a notch groove over here, so that can just pop out like so. And with that out, the drive belt should come off, and you can just pull the front roller out. And again, with the same thing as the back roller, you just want to spin it Make sure that you're not hearing any grinding and it spins freely so that the bearings are still good in it. And now with those out, we are going to remove the 2 remaining bolts holding the deck to the frame. Okay, so the deck should release from the frame now. Let's take a look at that. You should be able to just lift your deck off the frame now, which we can. All good. We will remove the old belt, place the deck off to the side. This would be a good time to look at the deck without the belt on it, see if you're seeing any kind of issues. My deck looks good. I just flipped this deck. I can show you the other side of the deck that is worn. So as you can see, there are score marks. It's not super. Okay guys, so the new belt has arrived. The belt came from Endurance Treadmill Belts Canada. It only took a day to get here. So it's on there. I just slipped it onto the deck. And I'm going to bolt everything back down the way I took it off. And we're going to see if there's any change. Okay guys, I have the new belt installed on this treadmill. And we're going to test it out. Okay, so without a load, looks like the treadmill is going to pull about 2 to 3 amps. Now, I've already tightened the rollers front and back, and I applied 30 milliliters of silicone lubricant. The treadmill, or the belt company, Endurance Treadmill Belts, they shipped over a free bottle of oil. And I used the entire bottle of oil as they recommended. And we're going to see kind of what the amp draw is with me walking on it at 2 miles per hour. So I'm going to turn up the speed. Now, if you remember before, it immediately shot up to 15 to 17 amps. So let's see what we got going on now. Now we're pulling between 5 and 8 amps, but it seems to want to kind of settle around 6.5 to 7.5 amps, which is exactly in the sweet spot where you want to be for these treadmills. I'll bump it up to 5 miles per hour to see what we're at for. All right, now we're still sitting at 8 to 7 amps being drawn, which is perfect. Yeah, guys, I would say that this treadmill is fixed. Only time will tell how long this belt lasts and how long the deck lasts, but this is a successful fix. Okay guys, that was the video on the repair for this Proform Carbon TL. I hope it helps you if you're looking to fix your own machine like this or another treadmill and you're kind of stuck like I was. The belt can significantly reduce the amount of friction on the deck and keep the motor and controller happy. So any comments or suggestions, please leave it in the comments and we'll see you next time.